course. So Eddie, thank you so much for doing this interview with me.
Thank you
Just to
for
keep
having me,
people up
man.
to speed, me and him be DMing back and forth. We talk about wrestling, we talk about life, we talk about just random stuff. And I knew when we started interacting, I had to get you on and do an interview with you, and so I'm happy we're doing this right now. So I'm gonna ask the first question, my friend. How did poetry start for you?
Whew, that's actually an awesome question. So it kind of started when I was 13. I had a friend who was really, really into music, and I kind of, 13 hormones hit you. I was a hopeless romantic. I would write like love poems for girls I liked, and he happened to see one of the letters in the poems I wrote for a girl in eighth grade that I had a crush on. And I remember he called me randomly, and like he was kind of like a friend of a friend first. And he called me. He's like, "Dude, do you have any idea how good of a writer you are?" I'm like, "Not really. It's not something I really took seriously." I was just kind of hoping to get the cute girl to like go out for pizza or like go see a movie or something. So he had kind of like convinced me. He started introducing me to all kinds of different music, and he was like, if I'm being honest with you, man, like you could probably write as good as these guys can. And at the time, I was a pro wrestling horror movie guy. Like I didn't really writing was something that came to me when I was 5 because my mom used to have an electric typewriter, and she used to always sit in our kitchen writing, what was going to be the great American novel. And just me naturally being a kid, kind of like this little monkey, I pulled up a chair next to her, and my dad had like found this like old school typewriter. So as she's sitting there like really like diligently working on a novel, as she's like diligently working on this novel, I was kind of just writing nonsense, just kind of imitating what my mom was doing. And that kind of put the bug in there of just like I wanted to be a writer because my mom wanted to be a writer. And then after that, again, it was like years went by. Like you grow up, you just move on. Like, I moved on to Power Rangers and then Jurassic Park. And then again, it here and there, like if there was a girl at school you thought was like really cute, you slip like a little note, like thinking you were to the girl in like 5th grade you thought was cute or whatever. And of course, she had no interest in you. That was all like Leo DiCaprio dominated 1997. So the rest of us were kind of left out in the lurch. And then, yeah, when I was like 13, I'm just a nerd with a soup bowl cut and terrible clothes. And I had this friend who was just like, I read your stuff, man. Like, we should get together. And he had actually convinced me to learn how to play bass. And we kind of formed like a band. And
Oh, okay.
neither one of us could sing to save our lives. But it was like, I always kind of got stuck with the singing duties in the band, even though I couldn't sing, because everybody would be like, well, you can write lyrics. I hate writing. Like, I don't know how to write. Like, I don't know how the hell you know how to do this, but it's something you're pretty good at. And there was no like revelatory, like, and again, yes, I do have 2 degrees in writing, but like, again, by that point, it kind of just became second nature to me. It kind of just became something that like, okay, I guess I'm good at this.
I think that's cool. So pretty much, so the writing started from when you were 13 years old, and you was talking about how it was a girl that you had a crush on. Hopefully, hey, take out pizza, stuff like that, and that became this thing, and you were in the band. So tell me about the band thing. That's pretty interesting. That just came out of the blue, or was it
Yeah,
just something like, hey, let's just do it?
um, yeah, I had no discernible musical talent whatsoever. Like I think when we talked about, I was never even like a music guy. I was always like a movie guy. So like I'd go over like a buddy's house, and his older brother, like you'd go and there'd be like he owned like 311's entire like catalog or like Everclear's entire catalog. And I had like no discernible knowledge of music whatsoever, listening to it, playing it. I even feel like a heel now because like I used to be like such a nerd for notebooks. Like I like sitting like directly across from me, there's like 3 Rubbermaid containers just completely full of notebooks. And it's like it feels like such sacrilege to me now because I don't write traditionally in a notebook anymore. Florence gave me this like beautiful notebook for Christmas. Like I kind of scribbled in it, but like everything now is like done on laptops and phones. Like I'll be like even driving around with my kids, I'm kind of dictating doing speech to text and all that stuff. And like, you know, I I try to sit down and like, all right, I'm gonna write like a real writer would, and then it's like you just get kind of lazy. Like, no, I got my phone. I got my phone.
But yeah, no, you know what's interesting though? Because I used to write in a book too, a notebook and stuff like that. But I think like once the phones came out, now they have the little notepad, and now you could write your stuff on in the book. I mean, you can write your stuff in a notepad now. So sometimes, yeah, like I used to always carry a book with me. Now I don't even carry a book with me anymore. Everything's all on a, on your notes now on the phone. But before, yeah, like I have so many notebooks in my house though,
Are you
like in
like
my
the worst?
closet. It's like
Are you like
craziness.
an offender like I am though, where you buy a notebook and you get like halfway through and you don't actually fill the notebook up, and then you're at like CVS and you're like, oh, I gotta have that notebook, and you didn't even fill up the
Yes,
last one.
dude, I'm a
I have.
sucker for stationery. Like I have this, see, like I have stuff here, but some of them is just notes I've taken, like just little notes I've taken down during a live, and then I have this other notebook that I bought. I don't know why I bought this pink notebook, and this is more like journaling slash poetry slash like reading how God spoke to me type thing. But yeah, I'm still have a lot of blank pages left, and yes, I have like note. Then I have these other notebooks here, like yeah, and like notepads of like my bills and stuff that me and my wife be writing on. So it's kind of funny how still use a notebook somehow, some way. But for the most part, yeah, like if I'm on the road, like if I'm like going to work or I'm just walking around, I always have like I used to always carry a notebook. Now I have the phone, so everything's on a notepad now. So it's like, oh, there's no. But I kind of miss writing on a notebook. There's something about writing on a notebook that is different. I feel like when you have the notebook, it's a whole different dynamic because anyone can take a phone and type things in, but it's the way your handwriting looks when you're writing in the heat of the moment. I think there's a big difference. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think it's cheating. Is basically how I feel on my phone now. I feel like it's like having the game genie for writers, because it's like,
Mm.
back if you had like really crappy penmanship, or like you weren't really great at spelling certain words, you kind of had to just live with it. And now it's like, I'll have a word because I have like a kind of complicated vocabulary, and like it'll just kind of already know what I'm trying to say before I'm trying to figure out, like, all right, I'm trying to write the word narcissist and I can't spell it. Like convenience and narcissist, I can't spell these words. And then it's like, boop, and it just fixes it for you. I'm like, oh, it did the work for me. Like it was funny because it was kind of like when I worked in radio. The old time radio guys would get so mad at like the younger guys because they'd be like, dude, everything's digital now. Like you don't have to do reel to reel. So like you guys are sitting here complaining about like worrying about the system crashing or something like that, when it's like, dude, like we didn't have that problem. We were doing everything by hand. Everything was like a labor of love.
Mm. So talk to me about because you mentioned you were doing radio. Talk to me about that feel. That's interesting, the radio thing. Tell me about radio. Like, what is it that you did, and what got you into it, and what fascinated you about it, which I think is pretty interesting as well.
I'm busy. So radio was kind of the byproduct of like writing not really working out for me. So I remember I graduated in 2005, and I had this amazing writing teacher who I remember I was dating her at the time, that like I was in a creative writing class with him. Show me what the password is. Show me what.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good. I understand. Hey, what's up, little buddy? Yeah, what
I'm
did
so
you type?
sorry, dude. Like I honestly like I'm like, oh my god, like pre-K is the worst because they have these kids nap at like 2 o'clock, and I'm like looking at the clock. I'm like,
Mm.
my oldest like passed out at like legit 6 o'clock. Him and his brother were like cuddling. They're out, just out. And then like my youngest, he gets like his second wind like mid like night. So like I'm like getting everything ready, and I'm like, oh god, Ryder, no, you gotta go to bed. And he's such a monkey. He's a hyper. Like this kid, when he's up, he's just like crawling on the walls. It's like you're like taking the broom, like get down from there, get down. You gotta go back to bed.
Oh my God,
My
bro.
oldest, like a nuclear bomb could drop on this condo right now, and that kid will. He's like me. He will not wake up.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Nah, I get all of that. But yeah, and I get you. Like I said, I'm a parent too, so I mean, I only have one kid. My son is 5, and he's still like on a speak delay thing. But yeah, he's all over the place, and I'm like, okay, I'm afraid he's gonna jump off something, and he's gonna like get hurt, and then right when I think he's gonna get hurt, it's like, oh, he's fine. I mean, what do you mean you're fine? Like, You just landed weird and you didn't break a bone? Like, what's going on?
Oh,
I
dude.
fall like that, I'm done. Like, I'm
Can I?
toast.
All right. So I realize like this is what I love about this sort of thing is it kind of takes the piss out of like trying to be like a really important or pretentious writer. So I got my photo come out here just running wild, just running roughshod. And I have an iPhone for my work. It's not mine. I can't afford this. I have like the poor man Google phone that's like, if you call me, I have to like put the speaker on and do this because I'm like, I can't afford to upgrade.
Mm,
My little guy put the flashlight on the iPhone. I used to be able to program the VCR when I was a kid. And I'm
mm.
like, I have no idea how to turn the flashlight on.
Wow. Wow, yeah. See, look, isn't it crazy though how technology is advanced like that? Even on your phone, you got a flashlight, you got a notebook, you got a TV, you got all this shit on a fucking bro. That is wild to me to think back, because dude, people carrying portable DVDs and portable CD players and Walkmans and shit. You got that all on one device. That is wild.
Oh God, no. I feel like sometimes I sound like a curmudgeon now. And I feel like that's part of the reason too, where like, especially as a writer, because I refer to the millennials as the we're the Jan Brady generation. So there's like Marsha, that's Gen X, and then you have Cindy who's Gen Y. And it's like they're so beloved for different reasons, and we're just kind of the generation that fell between the cracks. And it's just like I it makes me mental. Like there's certain things with my kids that drive me crazy. Like, when I was a kid, like you got like toys or gifts on like your birthdays and holidays. And then like with my kids, it's like depending on, because I co-parent, so depending on like what the other parent does versus what I do, it's like I remember there was one weekend I took my kids to the aquarium and then we had a birthday party and then Sunday it was like a cool off day. 'Cause I'm like, dude, I'm broke. I'm broke. And my oldest is like, so we're not doing anything today? This is so stupid. This sucks. Like, and it's like, wait, you're gonna throw away the whole weekend because there's one day where we don't do something? Like, it's so hard because I just feel like again, I'm not endorsing this as like the way, and this is probably why my brain functions the way it does. But I feel like when I was younger, and a lot of the poetry to keep it relevant because it is a lot of how I grew up and a lot of why I wound up in radio. And you asked about that, I'll get to that. One of the reasons I wound up in these fields and doing the things I did was because when I was younger, like, we had working parents. There was a time when my parents were divorced and like my mother's parents would watch me and like they were of an older generation, so they just turn on the TV and like send you in there with like a PB&J and like a Diet Coke and like a Twix bar and like, there you go, kid, throw on Nickelodeon. And it's just like, dude, the world was my oyster back then. Back when I could actually, program a VCR and time VCR to tape friends from my uncle when my family were at like take charge meetings for my sister and like I had to go to grandma's house and I could program VCR. Now it's like my son just put the flashlight on the iPhone for work and I'm like, just took 15 minutes. I'm like, yeah, I know we're supposed to be talking about poetry. How do I fix this?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I get that. How times has changed for real, man. So I wanted to ask you, because I did want to ask you about the radio. Like when you got into the field, like what was it about? Like, so what kind of stuff did you do there exactly? I always found it to be very interesting. Because I remember at one point I wanted to get into video, I mean into radio, and I wanted to understand how that kind of world works. I'm interested to know what that is.
So for me, so there was a period where, so again, I had that teacher and I had a girlfriend who he had told I handed in a bunch of short stories, and he was like, Rebecca, if I'm being honest with you, I had to Google these, or I had to look these up to see if you plagiarized them because they're so good. And I remember it was like my parents got us a hotel room for us. They had like a joint room next to ours, but she was kind of spilling the tea, so to speak, and telling me all these really nice things that this teacher, and he knew my oldest, he hated her. He thought she was just dumb as a rock because she went to the vocational school and then she transferred over. He was such a sweetheart with me, and like he had a reputation. I remember my favorite teacher, Kate, Mrs. Burnham. She was my resource teacher because I was a sped kid, and she was like, Eddie, I don't think you should take this class. He's going to eat you alive. And like as soon as he read my first story, it was like instant. He was like, I love this guy. Like he's imaginative. He's got great. He knows how to use words. Like he's smart. So I was like really jazzed about that and like really amped up. Like Mr. Riley thinks I'm a great writer. I'm going to go be a writer. What I wasn't prepared for was the insane amount of rejection, which obviously, you know, it's a tough thing. So when I was trying to professionally get published, I was so poor, and this has become since my favorite story, because there was a Barnes & Noble on Route 1 in Saugus, which I grew up in Stoneham and I moved to North Rembrandt, so it was like a 20-minute drive. My cousin grew up in Saugus, but there was a Barnes & Noble there, and I was so poor, I would take a notebook and I would go to the magazine rack at Barnes & Noble, and I'd kind of sit like the CM Punk sit, like, you know,
Yeah.
and would go through all the magazines, and I would scribble emails, and back this was with snail mail, so most of them weren't email, it was snail mail, all the addresses. Yeah, I didn't even know if a majority of these places even, you know, had website or anything like that. So I'm like, and back then it costs a lot of money. When you're broke, I was a furniture stainer during those. I was making $8 an hour. So like my paychecks, when I tell you they were like nothing, they were nothing. So I just resorted like, all right, and I'd find like the big like writers market from like the Writer's Digest, those big anthologies are like, here's your list of agents, here's your list of publishers. I'd scribble them in a notebook. And I remember, I remember one trip it cost me like, it sounds like nothing, but it was insane at the time for like an 18, 19-year-old. But I spent like $50 on one trip just on postage to like all these magazines. And I remember getting just rejected. And it was funny because I had posted on my Instagram a while back that I found this folder, this red folder. And I thought I threw everything in and out. And I'm like, oh, I guess my dad must have kept it. It had my old headshots, my acting resume, and all the rejections from writing. And I remember I got to a point where, so I was in this relationship with this woman that I lived with at 18, 19, and that relationship just toxic as toxic could be. I mean, brilliant woman. She really turned me on to like Sylvia Plath, Ani DeFranco, Tori Amos, PJ Harvey, all this stuff, but like as people, not compatible. So when that kind of so my relationship was over and I'm getting all these rejections, I was just like, I quit writing. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm talented, I guess, but I guess I'm not that talented. So just by pure like serendipity, happenstance, whatever, I had happened to see this commercial for a school called Connecticut School of Broadcasting, and my parents took me to a tour there, and at the time, so I discovered radio when I was 13. So like, I don't know if you're like a South Park guy. I'm not really, but there was an episode where I think Stan, I mean, cartoons don't really grow up, but like Stan hit like a puberty stage where like he hated everything. Like he just got, and every time he'd go to see a movie, it was like the audience be laughing, and in his mind, it's just people farting and pooping on each other and like throwing up on each other. And he's like, and they kept playing Landslide by Fleetwood Mac, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like Trey Parker and Matt Stone knew what it was like to turn 13, and all of a sudden, like, I don't want to play video games. I hate all my friends. I hate wrestling. I hate horror movies. Like, and the only thing that really jumped out to me was radio. The station in Boston called WFNX, they were an alternative. They were one of the first stations to break Nirvana. So
okay,
I got super into radio. So when I would be in certain SPED classes, I had back in the day, for those of you that are of age, I'm assuming there's probably more of us than younger folks, I had one of those Walkmans, the anti-skip Walkmans. That's a fucking pyramid scheme and a half. That also had the built-in radio. So I would sit, I'd listen to WFNX, and I would scribble poems in my SPED science class. And I remember thinking, like, after I was so bummed out and disillusioned about writing, I thought, well, let's give this radio thing a try. Radio is like your next love. So I wound up, by some miracle, getting the student loan that I just paid off like 2 years ago. And they said it was like a $14,000 loan. So I was like, wow. I went to school. It was a 3-month program, and I did really well there, but I kind of froze because at the time I was 19 years old. Like, I didn't know my head from my ass, you know, like I was just like, I love music, I love radio, because the thing with radio that I love is like, I'm like obsessed with like the nerdier stuff. Like, I love stingers and bumpers and like the bells and whistles of radio. That was always my favorite thing to hear. Like, you know, the deep voice guy with all the sound effects, like, you know, WFNX, like all that shit. I was just like, because I had a teacher there who I was trying to explain this to, and he goes, well, have you ever gone into acting? And I was like, no. He goes, well, you sound like were you a theater kid in high school? I'm like, no, the theater kids hated me. I kind of hated them back. It's like, what did I do to you guys? And you guys are like the marginal group, and you're picking on me. But I was like, no, but you know, at one point I did love movies. And he goes, so you got to think of like this, Eddie. Radio is theater of the mind. And as soon as he put that down my head, I went, oh shit, that's fucking all right. So let's try this. So I got out of radio school. I wound up crawling back to my furniture staining job because I'm like, I don't know what to do. And halfway through that, there's this guy named Big Jim. He works for the Sports Hub in Boston now. It was actually funny. I ran into him. So he used to be the production guy over at WFNX, that station I love. And he was also the afternoon drive DJ. And like a shot in the dark, I just emailed him one day. Just been like, hey, my name's Eddie. I'm a huge fan, da-da-da-da-da. And he was like, oh, thanks. He was kind of busting my balls, like, oh, thanks for blowing smoke up my ass. Like, you know, here's a number, or reach out to this person. And the next day, the woman, Gia, who was an absolute sweetheart, I miss her. And she was from Saugus, ironically, and she knew my cousin. She brought me into his office the next day, and he just looked at me and went, dude, didn't I just email you yesterday? I was like, yeah. And he was like, holy shit, Diddy, you going to take the internship? And I got the internship working for both the morning show and him.
Nice.
So it was tough, though, because that station was in, of course, obviously you're in Jersey, not Massachusetts, but Lynn is, reputation-wise, not the nicest place in Massachusetts. I will not lie, at 4 a.m. one morning waiting to, like, get into work. A prostitute a sex worker, because I know I'm trying to get the verbiage right. A sex worker had approached my vehicle and asked for a cigarette, because I was in my car, like just terrified, like it's 4 a.m. Like, and you know, she had asked for her cigarettes. I kind of rolled the window down. I was like, she just like was like taps on the window again, like, what are you doing? I'm like, going to work. She's like, oh, that sucks. I thought we might hang out. I'm like, at 4 a.m. And then. But like that was kind of like the running joke with FNX was it was this historically famous alternative rock station in Boston that was known all over the country because of Nirvana. Because Kurt St. Thomas, who was a DJ there, he had done this interview with Kurt and he had heard Nevermind, and he was one of the first DJs to like play Smells Like Teen Spirit. So the thing with these Boston days, they're very heritage stations. Like they had, you know, just this amazing, and for someone like me who, again, I've never really fit in anywhere. Like I've done acting, I'm a writer, but like I don't fit in with writers. I sure as hell didn't fit in with the drama kids. Like even in radio, I didn't fit in with radio people. So it was like not like
so I want to ask you, so I do want to ask you, because you say you didn't fit it, but okay, so have you ever had a place where you finally fit in, but you still felt out of place though? Like, you ever had those kind of feelings?
I think that might be where I am now. So I work actually down the street, about 10 minutes away from where I live now. There's a public access station, and my buddy Jason, who I've known since 6th grade, and it's a whole story there. I don't know if you want to sit and listen to that, but like, so he had got that job 10 years ago, and he had invited me. So when I was in radio, so eventually I got hired by the station called WAF, and they were a rock station, but they were like a butt rock, like we played like Shinedown and Godsmack. Not my cup of tea, but like I grew up with it, I loved it, and like, you know, I got to meet my you know, radio heroes, Mistress Carrie, who was a very famous DJ in the area, who used to do this show called Real Rock TV, and it would come on the Spanish station at like 11 o'clock at night, and like, you know, and it looked like it was a like public access show, but like I got to be her employee. Like there were a lot of cool things, but I was unhappy because my job was I was a board up. So what a board up is you have all the same responsibilities as a DJ, you just don't get to talk, and you get paid significantly less. And because
so it's like the graveyard shift, pretty much, right? You just there, okay.
Like,
whatever was recorded already, you just played it, and you just stood there and did nothing, pretty much.
So basically, from the hours, so they let go of this guy Bob Hanna, and he was a 7 to midnight DJ. He got let go. So basically, it was just from 7 till 5:30 in the morning until the morning show came on. it was just music, pre-programmed music. And it was your job. So like if there was a contest, you had to be the one to answer the phones and record whoever won and then play them back under like the music bed and stuff like that, and make sure the, you know, the new Linkin Park song is supposed to play at this hour at this time. And, you know, like, oh, we don't, you got to download this into, I don't even remember the name. I had so many things. I think I've forgotten more things than most people learn, because of just like every job I've had for years, it's just been like, here's 9 million hats to wear. But yeah, and it was just, at that job, I made $10 an hour and I got paid twice a month. Now, if you can like do that in like the economic, like, so this is like right when Obama got elected or got into the White House, but it was still, we were dealing with George Bush economics. So it's just like,
okay.
So I had multiple jobs, but I, you know, I wanted to do my due diligence with radio. But I was talking with this buddy of mine, Jason, on Facebook, and he works for, I won't say the organization because I don't want to upset him, but he's working for a very popular local sports team. And he was kind of in the same boat I was. He was just kind of like, you know what, man, I'm kind of done with this. It's not what I thought. And he had kind of just threw this idea out to me. He's like, hey man, I want to do this wrestling show. I want to do like a show where I get to talk to someone who loves wrestling. Would you be willing to do it? And I'm like, sure. And that was like, so 2 years later, he finally got the courage, and he was like, he worked at Saugus Public Access. Saugus comes up a lot in this conversation, actually. So he goes, hey man, like, I have time after my shift. Do you want to come in and shoot the show? And I was like, yeah, why not? Do you own a blazer? I'm like, okay, yeah, I have a blazer. So that was the shtick. We were wearing blazers, and he called it Marks on Commentary. And we would just kind of talk about favorite matches, crap like that. And I remember taking a look around the studio and being like, this is so cool. Because I remember growing up as a little kid in Melrose and watching Melrose Public Access, and like, there's a lot of rules of public access and with fair use and stuff like that. But I remember there was a show with these two guys, and they were showing like 15-minute long clips from Aliens, like the goriest clips from that movie. And I was a little kid, and it's like channel, I think it was 3 at the time, and I'm seeing like
okay,
eviscerated by these monsters, and I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. Go be again, mister. And I remember just being so enamored and think that had to have been the coolest job on the planet. And then of course, like in hindsight now, if I probably saw it, like, those guys are dorks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but when I was a kid, like, that was the same with like the guys that did wrestling shows, and they'd have the old school like plastic wrestling ring on a desk with all like the old like the 80s or 1990 old wrestling figures. And they'd be like bigger gentlemen, you know what I mean? They'd just be, but so eventually I got a job at this station. And it's one of those places, I love it. It's the best job I've ever had. But like, it's still that element of like, I still don't feel like I quite fit in, because it's like, I wasn't a film guy. I was never into film editing. Like, radio and writing, that was it for me. And those both have to be very tricky fields to break into. And like, again, the feeling I had, and this sounds probably so crappy to say or so vain, but like, I remember when I published my first novel, there was like this excitement and like, wow, and this is so great. And then you realize, you kind of look around, you're like, nothing changed. Like, everything's still the same. Like, so yeah, I mean, that was kind of like radio too. When I got into radio, I was at AAF, like, I'd reached my radio goal somewhat, because I'd want to be a production guy, but you know, I set off a board up and, you know, learn my chops and all that. And it was just like, dude, I can't pay my bills. Like, I don't care how much I love this thing, I can't pay my bills. Like, I'm, you know, quarter life crisis. I'm like, I still live with mom and dad. Like, I can't find a girlfriend that doesn't want to cheat on me or doesn't think what I do sucks for a living. So it's like, there was a lot of that, but I will credit radio though. So I stopped writing in 2006. And I remember the summer of 2010, I remember a friend of mine, this my buddy Mac, I knew him, he was a childhood friend. I'd known him since birth, basically. We were in this band, and the band fell apart. And he's like, Eddie, I want to form another band. You know, I'm thinking about maybe singing. What do you think? I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit. Like, I love making music with you. What do you have in mind? And he had this idea in his head for a name. He's like, well, I want to call it Darwin's Deathbed, and I want the logo to be the Darwin fish, but upside down, like that. And I'm like, that's pretty bad. Where'd you get that from? And he goes, so allegedly, the folklore is that Charles Darwin on his deathbed confided in a young woman that he didn't actually believe in the theory of evolution, that he was actually a faithful, God-fearing man. So basically, in essence, on his deathbed, he contradicted himself. And I was like, oh, dude, that's such a badass story. Yeah, we're on deathbed. No, we weren't. Nothing came of it. But I remember I was just, so I'm working 2 jobs now. I'm in radio, and then I got this job at a thrift store a couple of days a week. And I was telling Sarah this story, and to me, it's like such a funny story because we used to get the most bizarre items donated to our little thrift store. Oh, thank you. My little hype man. And we used to get a lot of like Jesus memorabilia. I remember some crazy stuff. We had a toaster that if you put your bread in, it would burn Jesus's face into the toast.
Oh, wow.
We had a holographic picture that like, it was Jesus with the crown of thorns with his eyes open, like blood trickling from his forehead. And then if you turned it again, his eyes would close. And I remember joking to a coworker, man, if I ever have kids, I'm gonna buy this picture so I could put it. I'm just gonna have a white room with a bed in it. I'm gonna call it the Jesus room. And my kids act a fool, I'm gonna say, you're going in the Jesus room tonight.
Oh, wow.
And let me tell you, as of right now, God, do I wish I had the Jesus room.
Turn it to a different color.
I will turn it. You have to go to bed, mister. I don't know how. Oh, there we go. Let's go with blue.
Yeah.
You know what? We're going to go with you. We're going to go snoozing because you got school tomorrow.
No, we're going to go snoozing here.
Oh, you snooze here? All right, well, I'll give you 5 minutes. If mama sees this, someone knows your mama sees this, and you're up at 8:38 at night, man. My ass is, whew.
Yeah, no, my wife has, my wife has my son at a very strict schedule. By 7 o'clock-ish, she's already getting ready. 7:30, he's knocked out.
Yes. Oh no, we were, so when we were together, it was so rigid. It was it was like military, like it was very, very, very tight and very, and of course, Natch, I mean, you can't blame them. I mean, now you're functioning in 2 different homes, like it's all, and then like I said, like he's in a preschool now where I would never allow my kid to take a nap at 2 o'clock. You kidding me? That's like, you're asking for it by doing that. But I mean, again, you can't question how they do things, so you just roll with it. I mean,
all right. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you about, because you were talking about writers and you were talking about your novel, and I wanted to ask you about your book right here. So the name Neurotica for the Modern Doom Scroller, like, how did you come up with this name?
So I was actually gonna point out because I'd actually done an open mic at a local bookstore. And I'm like, you know, I haven't done a in-person reading. God, I can't remember the last one I did, but I think I did it in Malden in 2000. Yeah, so my ex was pregnant with the little guys. So I think it was 2019. And I had nothing. Like I had stuff I was working on in college. So I'm like, you know what, I'm not, because my biggest fear with this stuff is like, I don't want to look like pretentious. I don't want to look arrogant. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, this is the first time you can go to open mic and like you're actually a published writer. That's pretty badass. And one of the poems I read, because I don't know why people like it so much, but the first poem I read was Unmarked VHS tape number 36. And immediately that one got a reaction out of people because the title immediately grabbed them. And they're just like, that's such a bizarre, unconventional title. But the poem itself is like kind of melancholic. But in terms of title, sometimes for me, and a lot of times, because I used to work at a nursing home, I was a housekeeper, and you know, I'd be mopping the floor or something, and like a few lines were in my head, so like I would immediately, I'd finish cleaning the room, I'd run into the janitor's closet, and I would just scribble something on my phone, or I would type something on my phone. This one was, I was in the shower, and I had my phone on, I was listening to Erotica by Madonna, and it's just like one of these, like, I always get really like worried about the way people read my stuff and then like how I come across to people or other writers, because I know how dark or somewhat pretend, like, because of the word choices or like the content, I know how the presentation sometimes comes across, but 99% of the time like a juvenile. So I remember like when I typically, like, I'll try to jump in, as you just said, this is usually why I can't like watch Unraveled a lot, is because like it's typically like I got my kids and like, oh guys, go to bed. And the one night that I did, like I felt so bad, 'cause I'm like, even tonight I'm like, I feel so bad because like a lot of people seem really excited to watch this and they're just like, just put the kid to sleep. Like but a lot of my humor is kind of juvenile. Like as dark as my stuff can get, like it kind of gets balanced out by like a stupid sense of humor. So I remember listening to Erotica by Madonna and thinking in like a weird, I guess it'd be like a Reddit sort of thing, like shower thoughts was, I started to kind of freak out thinking like, dude, you're 36 and you got baggage, my man. And just kind of feeling like, is that it? Like, am I just never gonna be with someone again? And like immediately, like I could have written 4 poems right there, and people would probably refer them to call them melancholic. And I said, no, it's neurotica. And like, and in that moment, I just kind of giggled to myself, like, did you just invite a genre of writing? I go, yeah, it's not depressing. It's not. It's not like I can write sad stuff, but it's coming from a very neurotic place. It's not coming from like a cynical or really somber place as much as coming from a very neurotic place. Because I think like most people, I mean, I'm sorry, I've kind of just, after everything I went through with my ex and, you know, a lot of stuff going on in my family with illnesses and stuff. Oh, go fuck yourself. If you're going to sit here and tell me that you don't have these existential thoughts racing through your head at all times, like, especially as we all get older and our kids get older. And let's face it, like, I love being a parent. It's my favorite thing on the planet. Kids are hard. Being a parent is one of the hard, and when you're doing it alone, it's so. How that title came to fruition was just kind of a shower thought of listening to this Madonna song and just kind of laughing to myself, being like, well, when someone asks you, like, why do you write such somber or like, you know, melancholic stuff, correct them and say, it's not melancholic, it's neurotica. Right? For people like me who like, and the doom scroller thing came from that. That was like a slang, that was like Urban Dictionary. That was a word where like, it was like a buzzword. You'd see it in articles and stuff about the pandemic and Donald Trump and stuff. But admittedly, I'm a doom scroller and I hate it. Because like, particularly to talk about wrestling with you, when all that stuff came out about Vince, I'm on Reddit every day being like, who else came forward? Who else came forward? And it's like, why do you do that? Because
but you know what's so crazy? But you know what's crazy about that? Me and my boy David from where we always talk about Undertaker. We always talk about, we always talk about wrestling stuff. And he said, wait, but Undertaker was closest to him. How come no one's talking about that guy? And he was the closest of the closest with Vince. So he didn't know nothing? Like, what's going on here?
So, and this is hard for me because admittedly at my wedding to my now ex, I came out as the Undertaker. That's how big of a, I had the trench coat, I had the hat, I had the fucking fog machines, and I had the music. I've been such an Undertaker mark my whole life since, you know, 1990. Dude, same thought. I'm like, there's no way Mark Calloway has been Vince McMahon's boy for fucking ever. There's no way I mean, somebody had actually asked him, you know, Mark, have you ever thought about writing a novel, like a book, an autobiography? And he's like, not if I want to stay married to Michelle. Because like there have been stories about Undertaker that have come out where, I mean, Jenna Jameson even accused, I mean, not like a nefarious way, but she had accused him of like kidnapping her when she was slightly underage. So like there's stuff that like I'm nervous because one of the things that got to me when that whole thing came out was, and it's like everything, it's like with music and writing and stuff like that. Like, I mean, all the my mom was a Michael Jackson fanatic growing up. Like that's I grew up on Motown. I grew up on, you know, Lionel Richie, Michael Jackson, Smokey Robinson, all that stuff. So like when all that stuff came out, I was like, can you separate the music or the art from the person? And with wrestling, it like really bummed me out because I was like, it depends on the severity of what comes out, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
no, it's interesting you said that because can you separate the persona from the person? That's interesting because I know it's interesting because lately footage has been coming out about like little storylines that Vince McMahon had, and there was one where it was him and Stephanie McMahon. They were having like some kind of argument on the show, and she had brought up some interest. He's like, oh well, you made me do this with, you know, your coworkers when I was 17. I said, hold on, this came out in what year? 2003. This storyline that they were arguing, but yet who found this footage? Like crazy stuff like that. It makes you wonder sometimes about all that.
I mean,
but yeah, it's crazy.
he's historically known though for being like the legit, like the last carny on the planet. And I mean, and like with people like that, it's, yeah, like who's been sitting on this shit? Like, why were you sitting on it? And it's, I mean, even in Michael Jackson's
Young
case,
Punk
the
was
father
boarded up
that
in a
had it,
pipe bomb, and they cut his microphone
right.
off.
Well,
Yo,
the
just
funny thing
crazy to
about that
think.
is, well, everybody shit on him when he left the company. It was like, oh, what a crybaby and this and that. And you're literally seeing it now. Like it's all coming to, and I would like to see some vindication for all the victims. At the end of the day, like fuck it, it's wrestling. I don't give a fuck. Like you know what? If I one day, because I was one of those people that sometimes like, there's a reason I stopped watching WWE in high school, because certain storyline like the Muhammad Hassan thing, I'm like that. No, that's, what are you doing? I remember even the Katie Vick thing. I'm like, what? This isn't entertainment. This is like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I remember that. The Katie Vick thing. I remember the Katie Vick thing. Yeah, that's I never really understood that one. That was yeah, with Kane. Yeah, I remember that.
Well,
Yeah.
the worst part about
Yeah.
that, I think I might have told you this, was that when they filmed Triple H doing that whole thing where he had the Kane mask on, he was crawling into the casket, there was an actual funeral taking place right across from them.
See, but this is stuff like no one questioned that though. Like,
Well,
I,
that's my whole thing is
you
like,
can't
so
tell me
when you
Triple
mention,
H didn't have any.
well, I think that's kind of why, like, and you know, Jason, my friend and my coworker, like, we kind of go back and forth with this, and I'm like, dude, wait, just wait, WrestleMania, no, WrestleMania. I'm like, something's gonna happen right before or on WrestleMania weekend, and it's gonna absolutely blow people's minds out the back of their heads. Because I'm like, I hate to say it, but I'm like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. Sometimes, like, I'm one of those people that certain things are just like, that's a cute little coincidence you have there. Like, I don't know. It's wild because it's like, again, can you reconcile the artistry from this terrible human? And I remember I go back to this Bill Hicks routine where he was talking about, he was kind of making fun of people that are like bitching about people doing drugs and, you know, throw your drugs away. And he was kind of like, oh, well, you know, if you think drugs are so bad, your records, throw them all out, because the people who made those records really fucking high. And that's kind of the thing is like, we've kind of reached a point where I'm just like, my heart can't take. I remember the weirdest one was Will Smith. Like, I legitimately like was like, and I otherwise did not give a shit, but I remember my buddy from AF Jack had posted the uncensored version of the Will Smith Chris Rock thing. And like, again, I think this is kind of how our generation got kind of screwed up a little bit, was Will Smith, he's the Fresh Prince, he's Independence Day, like this is the Will Smith I know, getting jiggy with it. Like, he's one of the good guys, but he's also a human being. His wife's cheating on him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not justifying what he did, but it was like, when you start to realize, like, this is why we can't deify humans anymore. We shouldn't be deifying humans to begin with, because going back to that poem I was saying about the Darwin's deathbed one, what inspired it was I read this article about John Lennon. And in the article, his best friend had said something like, John was stressing out about money and he was bitching about bills or something. And the friend had, so John's in the other room and his friend had kind of like mockingly sang from across the room, but John, imagine a world with no possessions. And John, in that very petulant, like that very, because John Lennon was a really temperamental, like angry dude, had yelled from across the room, oh, it's a bloody song. That was kind of the basis of that. The very first poem I ever had published in a collegiate magazine was basically about the hypocrisy of deifying humans. And, you know, when we put people on a pedestal, like, I mean, the one that really like freaks me out right now is like, I mean, it's so weird to admit this, but like, me and my 45-year-old sister had a conversation about Taylor Swift's drinking the other night. And like, my take is like, dude, she has no kids. Who gives a shit? She's a billionaire. Like, but again, it's just like, if you're a parent and you're making Taylor Swift solely responsible for, like, you know, well, she's supposed to be a role model to my kid. No, she isn't. You are. You're the parent. She's an entertainer. When did the entertainer become the babysitter? You know?
That's
But I
interesting
think
you said that. That's interesting you said the role model and the entertainment. That's a pretty interesting thing. I guess I never really looked at it like that, because there's that whole role model in the spect that, oh yeah, well, it's like Hulk Hogan back in the day, where, say your vitamins, and I mean, eat your vitamins, say your prayers, brother, and all this other stuff, and people were looking up to him, right? But then, of course, there's the NWO Hulk Hogan. He turns bad for the first time, and it's like, oh wait, what's going on? But what people don't realize too is, like, I think we pay more attention to the idolization behind that of man, in opposed to
Oh
where it should be, if that makes sense. Like
no,
the
it's
role model should be
1000%.
our parents or our relatives or the people around us that make us want to be better. Like, I understand why you would use like your idol as the role model, but but what are we looking at exactly about that? The entertainment aspect is your role model, or the person behind the entertainment? So, like, I think about, like, my father, for example. His favorite baseball player was Roberto Clemente, right? But the thing with Roberto Clemente, all right, he loved him as a baseball player, but he also loved him as a person, because he would always go to Puerto Rico, donate clothes. He was always giving back to the community. That's why he was the role model. That inspired him a lot. Okay, great. Now you're talking about someone like you said, Taylor Swift. Okay, you like her because she has good music, but what does she do outside of that? If that's how you are a person, it's like in church too. Yeah, you can go to church on Sunday, but what about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? How are you the same way at church everywhere else too? Or are you only a certain way only when you're at church? So I think about it in that same regard. But if I say that,
Well,
I've had people be like, "Oh, well, why are you talking like that?" No, this is the truth. This is the truth. Like,
well,
let's be
okay,
real
so
here.
to piggyback off of what you just said, though, so when I worked at that thrift store, we had this older woman, and I'm not proud of this. We nicknamed her the Crypt Keeper, because she was just such a nasty, mean old lady. And she would come in, and we would have Spanish customers, Puerto Rican customers, Cambodian customers, like what have you. Um, and they wouldn't be speaking English, obviously. And we'd a lot of Haitian customers, and they'd be speaking Creole. And she would come up to us and bitch about it. And then she would like just this is before Trump's even a blip on the radar. So don't give me this because people are like, oh, this country's only bad because of Trump. And no, it was always this. I'm guilty of it myself. Like, I was an Obama voter. I thought, like, oh, we elected the black president. Like, racism and prejudice must not be that bad. It's literally like speaking from a place of privilege as a white guy, because I'm like, I had no idea. And then I work in this thrift store, and this woman, in the same breath as she's rattling off these racial slurs, she then turns to us and goes, well, great, now I'm going to be late for mass. And it was like, and we had another lady that she would come in 20 minutes before we closed, and her cart would be filled past like the brim. And it was all clothes that she was planning to donate to her church. Now 6 o'clock would come, or like it'd be 5:55, like, oh, excuse me, miss, we're going to be closing up in 5 minutes, so can you take your purse? And I'm like trying to like not do it, but it's still ingrained in the back of my, like, the customer service voice, like, oh, can you please bring your purchases up so we can start bringing you up. She would just blow me off. And then it's like 6:15, all of a sudden now she's ready, and it's like, the fact that you're donating these clothes does not absolve you from the fact that you're a fucking asshole. Like, I forgive me for being that guy. Like, you can sit here and be as Bible thumpy and righteous as you want, and believe me, that's where a lot of the shit, when I write, that's where a lot of the material comes from, is horrible people, horrible, inconsiderate people that hide behind this, but I go to church, so I'm a good person. It's like, that doesn't work like that. I'm pretty sure if the man came up himself, he'd even tell you were an asshole. Like, and I'm sure, the Lord would not use that language, but I'd like to think that Jesus would come up and be like, nah, man, you're a dick. Like, I did not die for this shit.
Yeah. No, it's true what you're saying, though, because it's true. Like, there's that whole, because we've been saved by grace, not by work. So there's nothing we could do to earn our grace from God, if that makes sense, because Jesus died on that cross. And yeah, it is. But okay, that's what happens. But that's not a license for us to do whatever the fuck we want and sin and do whatever we want. No, like, you still have to live in a life accordingly and stuff like that. But what people mess up something, because I always say this, right? God's beef is not with us. God's beef was always with religion. Like, that's just the reality of it. You know, it's the people who made the religion and why we have so many of them in the first place. You know, it's just unfortunate. This is what it's come down to, and they compromise the gospel and they compromise so many things. But you know, now if I take this like into perspective, how our lives are, I feel like we compromise our own self-respect too, because in reality, we want to portray us in a certain way in person, but then when we're behind closed doors, it's a whole different thing. Only I feel like the people who really see who you are the ones that really they'll really recognize the real you, not opposed to like someone that you're just portraying. Because I always believe in this action. Don't listen to what people say, listen to what they do, because the actions always speak louder than what they say. Like I always go by that.
Well, it's funny because I've always believed that with writers too, because I mean, especially in this day and age where, I mean, we're literally living in Andy Warhol's quote of everybody will have their 15 minutes. I get so disappointed because I feel like, and I mean, I started my first writing group ever. So I had broken up with that girl from high school that I lived with. And I'd gone to get coffee with my sister at a Honeydew Donuts in Melrose, and she saw this flyer for a writing group, and she pointed at it, and I ripped it off the wall, and I called the number. And it was this little old lady in Melrose named Jackie. She was a Juilliard grad, like an advocate, just tremendous human being. And it was at this Unitarian church, and all these people, and it was funny because I was 19 at the time when I was in this writing group, and this little old man was in this, you know, motorized wheelchair, and he comes in, and he looks so sickly, and he just looks like, oh my God, this poor guy. But when he would write stories about growing up in Maine, which, like, the backwoods of Maine, if not, just like, yeah, like cabins and all that shit, and not having running water and like winters and like barely surviving as a kid. And it was funny because this little old man who would sit there and like so graciously and so humbly and like listen to all the writers, when he came down and read a short story, he'd like, and he was as skinny as I am, but obviously he was much older. He would throw his fist up and he'd get like really animated in stories, and it made me adore him. I remember coming home and, you know, my mom and dad was like, how'd the writing group go? And I said, oh, there's this guy, and you got to see the story he wrote, and I handed it, because we all made copies for each other, and I handed her the story. And she read the name on it, she almost started crying. I go, what's wrong? She goes, that was my debate teacher in high school. So the guy that I met in this writing group was actually my mom and dad's teacher. And It was so bizarre because, so I'd be in this group, and I'd come in with my notebooks or whatever, like, you know, I would try to type up shit that, you know, I was trying to write. And I don't know if you ever seen the movie My Girl, but like I felt like Veda in that moment. Like I was so so young and so little, and they were all middle-aged, and a lot of them went through divorce, lost spouses, stuff like that. But they were so fucking nurturing of what I was trying to do or what I was trying to say. And then like, it was such an amazing first experience, probably the worst first experience, because then every experience after that was so miserably depressing, because what you would see was a lot of people that just wanted to make it about how good they were, and like, aren't you paying attention? Like, I'm this amazing writer, and it was like, I wasn't looking to meet like amazing writers. I was just kind of looking for a community. And that was a tough road, and even in being in a band in high school and after high school, was everybody was more concerned with being better than this guy or that guy or this girl or that girl, whatever. Like, it kind of just made you like lose interest or lose your gusto for it. You're like, I do it because this is what I love, what comes naturally. And like, again, like there are periods in writing with me where like I do get a little depressed sometimes, because like, you know, I only use this on my kids. It's such a lousy thing to say to my kids, but I do say this sometimes, where my kids will like lie. They'll do something bad or they'll be mean to me, but it'll also be like something where like it's clearly like they think they're smarter than me. And I'll be like, guys, I have 2 college degrees. I have 3 published books and awards. Like, I'm not stupid. I see what you're doing. And like, I'm not saying that to like say I'm better than you, but it's like, dude, I'm not. I've constantly my entire life been undermined, and just like, you know, people just underestimate me. And it just like, when it started to become a chip on my shoulder, I had to like take a step back and be like, no, all right, this is not why you're in this. This is not what you showed up for. And I kind of have to remind myself, like, go back to Jackie Wattenberg, go back to that room, because those people empowered you because they were all in their own right amazing writers, and there was a melting pot, amazing melting pot. That's what writing community should be. And that's one of the things that, like, I'll be honest with you, in Massachusetts, but the exception is, so I did a open mic at White Lamb Books in Reading, for anyone local to the area. That was as close as I got back to that Unitarian Universalist Church in Melrose, because it was all mostly retirees. It was people that, and most of them were divorced. Most of them, we had a trans woman in there, which was awesome. We had this young black guy, and he was fucking amazing, to the point where, like, I'm sitting there being like, these people are actual fucking poets. What the fuck am I? You know, like, I could sit here and be like, I have a book, but, like, it's more like a teenage girl, a 16 teenage girl's diary compared to you guys. Like, you guys get poetry.
Right. No, because you did mention your books. I do eventually want to get into that. You know, it's funny. I think one of the worst things we can do with ourselves is trying to compare ourselves to other people. Like, let's say I'll look at my work and I'm like, oh, okay, my work's okay. But then I'll look at your work or Florence's work or Dalton's work. I'm like, oh yeah, I wish I could write like that. I'm not even close to them. You know, I look at Robert Kazi's work and I'm like, damn, I wish I could write like this guy. You know, it's funny because he's inspired a lot of my writing lately too as well. So it's pretty interesting how we do the comparison game. But you did mention one thing about community, and I think in a lot of areas, especially in poetry community, not everywhere, but some places I've experienced, I get where you're coming from, because there's the competition aspect of it, of who's better than who, or who does what more than the other person. And I feel like we forget why we do what we do in the first place. Believe it or not, back in 2021, 2022, I was on a hiatus. I did some stuff here and there with the podcast, but Unraveled wasn't really unraveled yet. And there was a point where I almost just decided, I didn't want to do anything no more anyway, because I was in hiatus in 2022 for the most part. And my wife was the one that said, I hope you're going to go back to your podcasting stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. But there was things that turned me off a little bit about the community back in 2021, 2022, especially that time. There were like things that turned me off, and it was always the competition piece behind that. And I think that's the biggest turn off, because we do, like you and me and Robert and my friend Lois and Stephanie and other people I know, like Florence, and we do this because we love it, right? We love the community aspect. And one thing me and Robert had spoke about a while back, actually, pretty interesting. It's not like I feel like it's, because I don't know if you know too much about the Instagram realm of things, but I remember when I first started out in the poetry community on Instagram, when they used to go lives, people used to actually stay. Like, even like, let's say, okay, your poem was read, but people actually stayed for the live until the live ended, because it was that sense of community. And now it's like that kind of it's not like that anymore. Now it's more like, okay, great, I'm on the open mic. Oh, great, okay, I'm gone. And then no one really gets to know each other, because that's how I met Robert Kazi. That's how I met Stephanie. That's how that's actually how I met Florence, through Scott Ladotti interview that I did, and that's what brought me and Florence and Dalton Darian together. And I always say this: if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met Magnus and Ragnar. I would not have met any of you, your side of stuff. So if anything, I thank God for people like yourself.
Oh no, I'm not, and it's funny because I remember seeing that Florence and I were friends on Instagram, and it's the funniest thing because I don't remember how we met. I think it might have been because Beyond the Veil Press had done an open mic thing on Instagram, because they don't usually do a lot of Instagram live stuff. I mean, I did one with Sarah, but I think, and it was a really like interesting group of people. It was like, and I was so nervous. It was really, and this is before like I even had the book yet. And I think Florence just kind of like, I don't know, found me through there, but like I almost like appreciate relationships where I don't remember how we met, because that happened with me. There was a writer, Mary Wisher, and she had published this book called Ignite, and she was in Atmosphere Press. So my book, Nothing to Get Nostalgic About, came out in September 1st, 2020 from Atmosphere Press. And at the time, I had a public Instagram, and I was just trying to, like, I was driving around the town that inspired the book and like taking pictures and videos and like writing about this is what inspired this. And there was one night I was just sitting on my couch, and like between just like the exhaustion of being a stay-at-home dad, the exhaustion of the marriage was clearly like on its way up, and the exhaustion of like I'm gonna be a published writer, but like nothing changed. And then of course this is like 2020, so I mean do the math, like pandemic, election, all that stuff. And Mary had reached out to me out of the blue. I don't even remember this, and they were like complimenting something I posted about, and they're like, Eddie, do you remember what the first thing you said to me was? And I go, honestly, Mary, I'm like, I don't. She was like, you immediately were just like, are you fucking with me right now? Like, she's like, and we used to do Instagram lives like this, like we would do readings with each other and author conversations. And her favorite thing that she'd always laugh about was like, you're so uncomfortable with anyone liking your stuff to the point where you're just like, when I talked to you at first, I'm like, is he kind of a dick? Like, what does he mean? Am I fucking with him? And then she was like, as soon as I talked to you, within like 5 seconds, I'm like, oh yeah, this poor guy, like he probably has like zero belief in himself. And it's kind of true. Like, I mean, obviously as you know, being a father, like when you're a parent, you kind of stuff that stuff way down. I mean, after just taking a beating in my divorce and why we got divorced, self-confidence had to come from somewhere, even if you fake it till you make it. But I mean, at this point, I mean, with writing, it kind of just comes, it's one of those things where it comes so easily, it's almost like, well, you suck. That's how easily it comes. So like, and again, like to anyone who's watching, if we're friends on Instagram and I've spammed you with poetry, feel free to tell me, like, knock it off, Eddie. I don't read your poetry, but like a part of it is too, because one of the big things I always hope to get out of anything I did, whether it was radio, music, writing, whatever, I just enjoy talking to people. Like it kind of got to a point with everything I'd gone through in life where like the one thing, and a lot of people say like, oh, I don't want to become cynical. It's one thing to be cynical, it's another thing to become indifferent. I think indifference is way worse than apathetic or even antipathetic or cynical, because indifference is like literally a whole other level of like, I don't fucking care. I don't care. I'm not going to care. You can't make me care. And unfortunately, you know, kind of the precursor to what the stuff right now was the book, because it was kind of written for the intention of being some other book, and then it was just stuff I kept sending to Sarah. But really the stuff that I write now is kind of where I'm at now in terms of like 3 years removed from my marriage and being a co-parent and all that. It's fucking tough. Like raising kids is tough. Raising kids on your own is tough. Co-parenting, tough. It's all tough. And then like I'll talk to people who are seemingly in happy relationships, and like obviously I'm not going to air their dirty laundry, but like the number of really miserable people that are just like, I feel stuck, Eddie, I'm just stuck. It's just like now I'm like afraid to want to be in a relationship, because I'm not saying like, oh, you know, like that's just the state of everything now, but like there's so many more people I know who are in relationships, and again, I'm not. So like for me, it's like the grass is obviously greener than where I'm standing. My grass is either fucking up to here or it's brown and it's nasty and all that shit. Like, so it is. It's tough. It's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow and think like, oh, maybe it's not all it's meant to be. You know, maybe it's not all that great. And that, and again, that's kind of where I came from with this book, and that's what I try to do with my writing is I'm just writing from a truly genuine place of like, this is kind of what I deal with. This is kind of what I experience.
So no, and I'm glad you said what you said, because yeah, I get like when we write, yeah, exactly. Like we want to write from a place of honesty. We want to write a place of genuinity. And when people read, let's say your book, they read it as, oh, okay, yeah, like wow, I so resonate with that. And I think that's one of the things too that gravitated me towards you too. When I bought the book and I started reading, I was like, yo, this is freaking awesome. So, you know, because we are towards the end of the live already, but I did want to ask you, when people hear your name, Eddie Brophy, what do you hope people can remember you by when it comes to your book, when it comes to your life, when it comes to your stories? That when, you know, we're not here anymore, they hear Eddie Brophy, what do you hope to be remembered for?
Can I give you like, because I've never, and I was really nervous to do this. I won't lie, like I love you to death. I think you're a great guy, but like I was so nervous to do this because like when you post to the first thing and people seem genuinely interested, And these can go either way. Like you start up with like 10 people, you're down to 2, you're down to no one. I didn't care because like Sarah and I did an open mic on Valentine's Day, and like 3 other guys showed up, and it was like 5 of us. And Sarah was like, well, you know, it was 5 of us, Eddie. I was like, Sarah, if nobody showed up and you just read the phone book to me, I was just so happy to see you and talk to you. But so for me, like being asked a question like that is like, holy shit, wow. That's a, you know, because I'm not someone who thinks to use one word to describe myself is evanescent. I've never felt seen. I've never felt present. I've never felt like I was there. If anyone said my name, I think I'd be so fucking confused and like flabbergasted and just like overjoyed that my name was even coming out of someone else's mouth. Because like in my mind, like I'm the invisible kid. Like I don't exist. Wow. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I mean, you're a dad, so this is like a pretty straightforward one. Like, I'm not a perfect dad. I'm not an exceptional dad. I try my best. You know, I want to be better than my dad was. My dad, for all his faults, like he tried. He did what he could with what he had to work with. I think I have way more to work with than he did, but there's still like that tragic flaw of I'm human. I'm not going to say the right thing all the time, and I do feel this enormous pressure because I don't. You know, a lot of my poems now I write is because I drive around and I see these amazing, gorgeous homes, and I'm like, huh, I'll never own you. Like I don't know how people. I don't know how anyone has a home now. I think if if anyone ever said my name and it was in the context of joy or happiness or reverence, and it was something that wasn't negative, or if something I did brought anyone joy or hope or happiness, I mean, for me, it's again, I'm not someone who thinks the world of himself. I don't. I got an overbite. I had leg braces as a kid. I'm a $120. Like I've been cheated on by literally every person I've been in a relationship with. So like I don't have a high opinion of myself, but I try really hard to just be polite and respectful. And you know, it's I think I would just be proud if my kids one day just told me how much I meant to them, or that, you know, despite nights where like tonight when Ryder's coming out here, I'm like, oh buddy, like I know you're excited and you're really cute, but you gotta go to bed. I'm gonna get murdered by your mother. I just, you know, I think the running joke I had after my divorce, I remember I cried a lot. I'm not a John Wayne type. I cry all the time. Oh, the dumbest shit too. Like I'll watch Full House episodes on purpose just to cry. Cause I'm like, it's almost like an orgasm. Like I don't jerk off. I watch Full House and I cry. That's like my version of like rubbing one out. Like I just need to cry. I need to cry right now. I'm watching Full House. I think for me, like the joke that I told people was like on my epitaph, just here lies Eddie Brophy, he tried. I mean, with writing, there's obviously the sense of like when you write, it's really important to you. It means the world to you. But you have to understand that once it gets published or once it escapes your journal or your laptop or your cell phone, it belongs to everybody else, and they can do with it whatever they want. And I would like to think that I would be the type of person that wouldn't be responsible for a Mark David chat. Not to blame J.D. Salinger and be like, hey, it's your fault that he did that to Lennon. But I would like to think that like maybe if somebody read something I wrote, it would want them to want to write their own book or go to an open mic night or encourage friends to create or cultivate their art. Maybe they'd get the courage to want to message me and be like, dude, you seem like a pretty solid dude. Like, I live here. You live in Massachusetts. I'm not from Massachusetts, but like, do you have Zoom capability? Like, if something I did was able to create relationships, long-lasting relationships, or was able to, more importantly, fix a relationship that someone has with themselves, that would be like so fucking cool to me. Because it's like the two things I struggle the most with is I don't think I'm the greatest looking guy. I'm fucking lonely all the time, and I have a really difficult relationship with myself. And the fact that because of that relationship I have with myself, I have such an enormous love for the rest of the world, and like trying to like always repair the things I can't repair myself. So like if anything someone wrote and they can and it resonates with them, they relate to it, and they're just like, you know what, I really want to fix my relationship with me, but I also don't want to become indifferent, if that makes any sense.
That's powerful. Yeah, I get all that. I definitely get all that. I will say this because I struggle a lot with low self-esteem. So everything you said just now, I do resonate with, because again, like if I always say this when it comes to my wife, I've known her for 10 plus years, but if I wasn't married to my wife, I'd probably be living with my mom and just
Yeah.
taking care of her, because I just never saw myself the kind of guy to be married or in a relationship. To be honest, I thought I was gonna be this basement kid, or this bitch ass kid living with his mom because his father passed away, and that's it. Like, like because I tried the dating game and nothing ever worked out, even though a lot of things I've messed up a lot too. But um low self-esteem's a very, very real road that especially us men don't really talk about a lot for whatever reason. It's like this pride defeat we don't like to mention, but we know it's there.
Oh, I have
And
zero pride. Like I'm the first one in the room. So like I was always the first one that I had the homophobic slurs thrown at me constantly by relatives, by my own father, because it was like he's not built like the other guys, and it's like, dude, I could, but I'm literally like now as a father to two boys, I don't give a fuck. I just don't. Like my son lets me paint his nails. He'll ask me to paint his nails for him, and that's why usually I have black fingernails. Is because I don't care. I was raised by two older sisters. They were constantly putting me in girls' clothes and all this shit. Like I used to perform shows dressed as a woman because I thought it was funny. Like I just thought it was funny. And because if you're homophobic or you're transphobic in the crowd, fuck you. Like I'm gonna wear a fucking dress. And I'm gonna stuff the shit out of my bra. Because if I was a woman, I'd probably have like no boobs. But like like I didn't give a shit because I was someone that like constantly got antagonized over shit. And it's just like, and I knew so many kids who were gay or who have now transitioned. And I knew at the time, like, you don't, it's like Kafkaesque, like, you don't feel comfortable in that body. That's not the body you want. So admittedly, like, I don't pander with my writing, but like, I'm trying to get more into, I think the more I learn about myself, the more I'm like willing to write about issues like that and saying like, you know what? There are increasingly more and more and more people who are looking for somebody that wants to admit that like, dude, this shit is, I'm not comfortable in my skin. And it exceeds so much more than just gender. And it just, again, I personally, like when you said, it's like, how would you feel if someone said Eddie Brophy? I'd be knocked on my ass if anyone said my name because I just feel like such a perpetual nobody because I don't feel important. I don't feel special. And I can guarantee you, if you throw a rock, you're going to hit like fucking 30 other people that feel the same way that do amazing things, are amazing artists or musicians or sculptors or painters or singers or, whatever, like school teachers that just feel like they're not good enough. And I want to, as corny and as like pretentious as it's going to sound, I shouldn't even say it, but like if I can offer like a life raft to anybody, that would be more than enough for me.
Nah, amen. Amen to that, brother. So Eddie, I just want to say thank you for going. As you're probably gonna hear a lot of noise up from this because my brother-in-law has a dog, keeps running around the house. I've been muting this over and on and off so it doesn't hear. But anyway, no, thank you for so much for coming on live with me. Thank you so
Thank you for
much
having me.
for
And again,
sharing your life.
I appreciate you and all of you who have kids. And my 4-year-old infiltrated this thing like a dozen times tonight. I'm like sitting there like, oh God, like I look like such a shitty father. Please go to bed, please. But I appreciate, and
No, but
again,
it was a fun conversation. Because again,
no,
it's all
appreciate
about
it.
you. At the end of the day, like whatever you want to talk about. Like we talked about it privately. Hey, I mean, yeah, like I want to talk a lot more about the book, but hey, you know what? I like to let it go organically. So at the end of the day, it's all about hey, you know what? what does Eddie Brophy want to talk about? You know, like what's that Cody Rhodes thing? What do you want to talk about? But yeah,
I'm very good at being the worst salesman on the planet. You're like the Tom Hanks in that thing you do, like, we want to talk about this. They're like, yeah, so anyways, so that time that I got stood up at the 7th grade
no,
dance.
but it's fun though. Like it's different because I live for these stories because again, like I take them as like like little diaries and stories to talk about that we can't read in books, but we can have
Sure.
these things, and I really appreciate that. So Eddie, thank you so
Thank you for
much
having me.
for just being yourself, man. I really appreciate you. Any last words before we end this live?
I'm very humbled and very proud and very just flattered, and thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
All right, thank you so much.